Hello everybody, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk you through Module 2. So as always, you click here on the modules and it shows you the Module 2. So in this module, which is 2 weeks long, starting after our class tomorrow and going through into our next synchronous class 2 weeks from that, we're really focusing on these kind of individual approaches to leaders and leadership. The self as leader, I call this. The traits, skills, and behavioral approaches, which are chapters 2, 3, and 4 in the North House book, as well as some additional resources. So in this module, and because there's so many different, I do want to cover as much as we can from this book, and then also be able at the end of the semester to bring in some additional resources that are not reflected in North House. I have chosen in this module to break you up into groups of 3. And so 3 of you will be working on the trait approach to leadership, 3 will be working on the skills approach to leadership, and 3 will be working on the behavioral approaches to leadership. And then you'll have time to review each other's responses for the other chapters and also take time to read those chapters and make sure you're familiar with them. These are not earth-shattering and they're not very difficult, I think, to follow. And so it's also a good kind of start to thinking about the foundational pieces, and we'll discuss them in class on the 25th. So you'll see here your Module 2 overview, a link to the resource site for the textbook, which I'll talk you through in a moment, what I'd like for you to do there, strengths and values, and then the specific assignments and a critique assignment. So in this module, you'll be reading and responding or creating a response to one of the 3 chapters. You'll then take time to read and review the responses from your peers to the other 2 chapters that you have not read for your own work. You'll still read them, of course, but and then you'll be doing either the Strengths Finder assessment or via character strengths for class. We'll talk about that in class on the 25th, or both. And then you'll be working on your first critique for me. So there is an overview of the critique here, and I will go through in this recording the overview of the module in its entirety, and then also this discussion activity overview. So Module 2, there's some additional information there. There's always lots of resources, so many things we could do and read and review, and not enough time. But if you're interested in learning more of the historical foundations of leadership, this Intro to Leadership Theory PowerPoint goes over some of those historical pieces. It's a couple years old, but the history of leadership doesn't change. It's just how we view it has changed, perhaps. And there's a screen capture of that as I'm talking through that PowerPoint. So if you want to watch that, and it intentionally starts 3 minutes in. So this also refers to the previous book, but it's still the same history, so it's not a problem. Complete one of the following 2. If you've completed Strengths Finders before, please find your PDF from that using the same email you used to take it and bring that report with you so we can talk about it in class. You only need to do the top 5, which is currently $24.99 if you use your EDU email address. If this is a financial burden for you, please contact me individually and I will track down some extra codes we might have floating around in the department. So, because I do think there's value in doing Strengths Finder. The VIA Character Strengths Survey is free. My preference is free to do both because I give you different insight. The Strengths Finder assessment is really strengths for work. And then the VIA Character Strengths Survey is really about your own individual character strengths. And then we talk about how that can connect with leadership. So for the Module 2, you're going to read and review all the resources listed, but I recommend that you start with the assignment you have specifically if you're doing traits, skills, or behavioral, and I'll show you where that is in just a second. So there's some more information there, and here's where that activity overview is to let you know which one you've been assigned. But first, let's talk about the course materials. For the trait approach, read Chapter 2. Complete the questionnaire at the end of the chapter. These questionnaires at the end of the chapters really help us for this leadership profile and growth plan assignment that comes later in the semester. And then on the study site, and I'll show you how to use that, there's one video I'd like for you to watch. Skills approach, Chapter 3, questionnaire, 1 video, 1 audio. Section 3, behavioral approach, Chapter 4, questionnaire, and then 1 video as well. So what are you doing in your Module 2 discussion activity? So you will either be assigned an initial response or a synthesis. Peer responses as appropriate from all of you to anybody else's posts. I do not require a specific number of responses to your peers. I really just want you to be thoughtful. If you have something in somebody's presentation like, wow, that was really awesome, I wanted to share why I think this was helpful and beneficial to me, please, by all means, compliment your peers and let them know what's helpful and give them that feedback. If you have questions, if you want to know more, if there's connections between what they posted and what you posted, again, by all means, please post those, because that helps us create this community and also create some deeper discussions into the content. So initial response and peer, and then there's the critique. So there is a separate screen capture for the critique, so I won't go over that in this screen capture. But let's look at this Module 2 discussion activity overview. So your initial response, you're synthesizing the key points of the approach using the chapter and those resources I've assigned. This is a kind of a peer teaching opportunity where you're like, I'm going to explain the trade approach to leadership to my peers in 10 minutes or less. You don't have to worry about making it perfect. Please don't spend hours making your presentation look like it's publication ready. We are not sharing this outside of this Canvas site unless it's fantastically wonderful and you want to share it. By all means, please do so. You don't have to use a specific tool like Canva or Adobe Express or PowerPoint and Google. Just think of whatever it is that's easiest for you to kind of explain. Lots of people have used infographics before, especially if their chapter covers certain models. They might do a model overview and an infographic. And you can record yourself talking over it through Screencast or ScreenPal, which is what I'm using, or you can, record through a PowerPoint, whatever you want to do if you feel like you need to talk through it. Nothing specific is required, just using it as an opportunity to deepen your own understanding about the approach and then share that with your peers. And then peer responses as appropriate, as I mentioned already, and then synthesis. So if you are required to do the synthesis, then you'll have to wait until the initial responses are complete before you can synthesize. And so I recommend that if you are a synthesis person, like Candace is here for the trade approach, that Candace, you focus in the first week on doing your critique and really understanding and writing that aspect, and then maybe reading the other chapters. And then when Sarah and Elizabeth have posted their initial responses, you'll go in. This gives you a good 6 days to respond. You can also look at the peer responses. So let's talk through that. Trade approach, initial responses, Sarah and Elizabeth G. Those are due on the 18th, which is a week from the date that the module opens. Peer responses are due a couple days later, just so that if the synthesis person wants to utilize those in their synthesis, they have the opportunity to do so. And then this is due the day before class so that I have time to look over them and then think about ways to bring out some of those pieces in class as well. Skills approach, Allegra and Elizabeth, you're doing the initial responses, all is appropriate, and Lindsay, you're synthesizing Allegra and Elizabeth's responses. Behavioral approach, Michaela and Melissa, you're doing the initial responses, and then Jill, you're synthesizing their responses. So what does a synthesis look like? You're really like thinking deeply about what you know about the chapter and the approach, but looking at how Michaela explained it and how Melissa explained it, and pulling together the kind of most important pieces in that true synthesis. So we're practicing our synthesizing skills, which is good for grad work, but we're also, again, providing yet another resource for our peers. They can watch Michaela's response or listen to Michaela's response or look at her response. They can do the same for Melissa's, but they can also use yours as a way to understand it more deeply. So we will share the wealth. So if you have an initial response this week, that means that next time you're probably going to have a synthesis, or by the time we're done, everybody will have done initial responses and a synthesis. So that's kind of the way that this works. Another reason I wanted to post this today was to make sure that if you have the chance to look at it before class, then we can talk about any of the details in class tomorrow on the 11th as well. So back to the modules. I will post this screen capture here. You've got the Module 2 overview, the student resource site. Let me show you how to use that. Strings Finder, your assignment activity overview, where you post them, and your critique overview with screen capture as well. So just a quick intro to the North House Student Resource Site. This is from edition 8. Now with the 9th edition, they want you to buy the ebook and access their kind of platform with all the additional resources. So I refer you back to 8. Almost all the chapters are the same, but specifically for trade approach. So if you look back here, in the modules, I'm asking you to, for chapter 2, read chapter 2, complete the questionnaire, and then do this video Great Man Theory. So if you go here, trade approach, you just do the down arrow and you can do video multimedia, and there's your video Great Man Theory. You can absolutely, of course, access any others of these. You can quiz yourself on the chapter. You can use their flashcards. You can pull out their discussion questions. Some of these links do not work, so because this is, again, the previous edition, but I have double checked, and as of Friday, all of the links that all the video and audio that I'm asking you to do did work. So if you find something that doesn't work, please let me know. So hopefully that makes sense. This video went a little bit long, but I wanted to make sure I got through all those details for you. And if you have any questions, we can talk about them in class. And of course, you can always reach me individually. Hope you have a good day. Thanks.